In this video, we are going to talk about drawing in Scratch. To create a new sprite, we are going to select on the Paint New Sprite tool, which is right below the canvas. Now, this should default to what's called the bitmap editor. And bitmap is a special type of image where basically the computer only recognizes colors. And this is different than vector, which is the other mode that Scratch can work in, and we'll see some of those differences a little bit later on. So the first thing to get used to are some of these tools over here. We've got a brush tool that allows us to just draw lines. We've got a line tool that allows us to create lines that we can use to create shapes. And then we've got our rectangle and our ellipse tool. The rectangle tool will default to being hollow in the center, or just an outline. However, we can, if we click on the rectangle tool, switch it to fill mode over here. We can also change the color to create any colored rectangle that we want. Now we've got our ellipse tool, which creates an ellipse, and if we hold down shift, it'll create a perfect circle. So in this example, we are going to create a snowman. So I'm going to select a nice gray, and over here is my zoom tool. I'm going to zoom out, so I'm sort of looking at the full size of the screen. You can see this now will cover the entire canvas. I'm going to zoom back in and scroll down to the bottom. And we're going to create our first snow circle. So as I drag it, I'm going to get an ellipse the size I want. And now I'm going to start a new ellipse up here. I'm holding down the shift key. Now before I let go, I can take this and move it around. So I'm going to position this right here. But now once I click off, this has all been flattened. I can't then go back and select this circle. This is all one shape now that can't be broken back apart. I'm going to create the third circle, which is the head, and put it right on top. And there's the body of my snowman. So now the next thing that I want to do is I want to create the nose. So I'm going to use the line tool here. I'm going to get an orange color. I'm going to create a little triangle. And there's my nose. Now I've got this gap in the middle. I can use the paint bucket tool for that. It will fill anything that is the color that you click. So when I click on this, it's going to fill all of the gray area that was inside of there. And then lastly, I'm going to draw some lines. I'm just going to use my paintbrush tool for this. I'm going to get this. I'm going to select a black color, and I'm going to click there. There we go. I'm going to make one more eye over here, and voila, there's my snowman. Now, if I wanted to, I could have made the eyes larger by increasing the size of the paintbrush down here in the bottom left-hand corner. Now if I click, I get these nice two big black eyes right there. Okay, so the biggest thing about bitmap, as I said a second ago, is that this image can't be broken up. This is one flat image, just like if you had drawn it yourself on a sheet of paper. Which means that it's just one picture of pixels, and pixels are teeny little squares on your screen that are going to be that are set to a single color. And everything on the internet, everything on a computer screen, is displayed in pixels. And the downside of bitmap mode, or one of the downsides, is that if I want to make this image larger, I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to select my whole snowman. I'm going to take this whole area and I'm going to blow it up to be a much larger snowman. When I do that, if we look at my image over here, we can see the edges of the circles, the edges of the eyes, the edges of the nose. They're kind of rough. They're kind of broken up. It looks like they're all these little kind of rectangular edges, because that's exactly what they are. Those little bitty pixels just got bigger. So those little bitty squares are now bigger squares, and it causes our image to not look very smooth. So we're going to do the exact same snowman, except for now, I'm going to move this guy over here. We are going to build a snowman with a vector. So I'm going to paint a new sprite. I'm going to convert to vector. Our tools over here look very, very similar, although there are a couple of differences. So I'm going to come back down to the bottom. I'm going to get my ellipse tool. It's still set on solid fill. I'm going to get my nice gray color. I'm going to draw the base of my snowman. And I can move this around just like before, but the difference is when I create my second ellipse, and I put it on top, if I click off, these are not flattened. I can still take either one of those circles and move them around. Every image or section you create is going to be saved as a separate object that can be transformed and changed at any point. So I'm going to go ahead and create my head and put it here. I'm going to create my orange beak the same way I did before with my line tool. Now notice these dots. I can make an enclosed shape that then will be able to act as an enclosed shape. If I click on the end of this line and connect it to this line, this Scratch is going to remember that this is now one shape that's all connected together. So when I take my paint tool, I can now, regardless of what's behind it, I can now fill the inside. But notice I could select that head or that head. Each object is a different object. And then lastly, I'm going to put my eyes in the same way I did before. I'm going to get my pencil tool. I'm going to get a thicker line. And there's an eye and there's an eye. Now my eyes didn't go in the place I wanted them to. That's fine. They're separate objects. I can move them at any time. So now that I've got my second snowman, I'm going to zoom back out. And when I make this object, I'm going to select all of it and blow it up really big. Now compare that to the snowman in bitmap mode. Notice how perfectly smooth the circles are, how perfectly smooth the lines are. In vector mode, instead of each little pixel being a dot, it's actually a pretty complicated math formula where everything is a proportion. So everything gets bigger in the same way so that everything can remain nice and smooth. It's basically redrawing it but at a larger size without making each of those little bitty pixels blown out. And this is why vectors are the most common tool that you're going to use when you're drawing in Scratch. It's easier to use, it's easier to edit, and it looks better.